The amount of personal information about all of us that is out there is staggering. And I think it's too much. I think it's too much. Right now, Minnesota legislators are dealing with this issue, right? And you may have heard since the assassination of Melissa Hortman over the weekend, lawmaker addresses have been removed from kind of state affiliated web pages. Uh, but so what, right? They were taken off of the legislature official website. They've been posted for years, the home address. And here in Minnesota, where we have had a fair number of scandals about people running for office in districts that they don't live in, the public need for information is strong. But after a political assassination where a madman killer went to at least 4 elected officials' homes, I think we've gone too far with making information public that should be harder to get. And I wonder how you feel about this. If you've ever looked up your own information, is it easy to find your home address? 651 461 9226. Because your stuff is everywhere. Both the Pioneer Press and the Star Tribune have done articles today about this very topic because I think I have always been sort of cavalier about this, where my view has been if somebody wants to find you bad enough, they're going to find you. But the way that this accused killer has, according to federal charges, the way he was using everybody's information or finding everybody was nothing sophisticated. It was a bunch of these like Yellow Pages style websites. And you can, the Pioneer Press did a search using one of these websites that was written in the notebook that was cited in federal charges. And it cost 95 cents. And boom, there's Melissa Hortman's address. I used to have my phone number listed, like literally listed in the book. Remember, I'm old enough to remember when we got a book, when we got a phone book.
Back in our day.
Yes. Were you unlisted, Dan?
No.
In my entire career, one time somebody called me. Like a viewer from TV called my house. I remember exactly. It was my old house that's on the same block that I live in now. But I can picture being in the bedroom, picking up the phone, and it was a guy with a question about a penny that he had because he saw a story that Reg Chapman did on Channel 4 about a certain kind of penny with a mistake on it that is worth like $50,000.
So he couldn't find Reg's number, so he called you?
Found my number in the phone book, and I suggested that he use that same phone book to call a coin expert. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
Or at least call Reg.
But I've always been very sort of, well, what's the danger? What's the big deal? If you look at the ways to find people's home addresses, not only is it, well, you could just do a simple Google search. I did. I'm not going to say what it is.
Don't do it.
But you just type in Dan Cook home address and boom. I mean, there are a lot of Dan Cooks out there.
That's true.
Got to be a little more specific. But you can find my home address like this. Don't.
Too late.
How do we stop it? And do we want to stop it? Are you willing to make the trade-off certainly for elected officials, but I'll tell you, if I were elected official, like the old day when you'd call Quest or whatever your local phone company was and say, I want to be unlisted, and they would charge you like 50 cents or something and you'd be unlisted. and no one could find you. But now with the internet, they can find you anywhere. And a lot of this information comes from government information. It comes from when you had the real estate title on your home. All the counties, and I've used them. I mean, all these years as a reporter, I have used these public records to find houses, to find people, to go knock on somebody's door. But today, the fear is that if someone knocks on your door, they may be someone impersonating a police officer looking to kill you. And I don't want to be hysterical about this stuff. And also, I don't know how you put the toothpaste back in the tube, but it is legal for people to kind of aggregate this public record information, then sell it. That's sort of what these websites, these yellow pages style websites are doing. And I think it should be illegal. I think it should be illegal. And I am typically on the side of more disclosure, more information, more public access. But in a time, I don't know, man. I used to look at the people who would post pictures of their kids and put like an emoji over their face and say, like, I think you're being a little overprotective, a little ridiculous. There are times that I posted photos of like my front yard and someone will text me and be like, hey, your street, your house number is on there. And I thought like, you know what? Like my information is everywhere. And today I'm looking at this and thinking like, is there a way I can lock down all of this stuff? How do I erase my identity? Because I'm worried about safety. Texter at 651-461-9226 says, as a repo agent, it's 1,000 times easier now to locate people with the internet than it was even 10 years ago.
I bet.
And
it's only going to get easier with, the advent of AI.
Well, AI is going to process that information so much more quickly. And there are so many sources of information that you don't even think about. You fill out a mortgage, fine. If you're a renter, maybe you have a little more ability to be unseen. But
maybe, but you said you found me and I'm a renter.
Texter says, I'm old enough that we used to use telephone books to look up people's addresses. It's not an issue of it being harder or easier to get addresses. The issue is how that information is being used today and if it's being used for illegal purposes. I think there are too many nut jobs out there.
Well, and, we can't do anything really about how people are going to use that information, right? I mean, you can't go to somebody who's searching for something and say, no, make sure you're using that for the right reason.
Right.
So the only thing you can do is choke off that information pipeline, right? That's the only thing we can do if the determination is it's too unsafe to have this stuff floating around out there.
And maybe you think that the access to public information is more important. Texter pointing out that the wealthy, the CEOs, the athletes have found a way to hide their identity, where you put your house in an anonymous trust.
Because they have either the time, the money, or the people that can go do that for them. Yeah. But the rest of us,
we don't.
We don't.
My parents are on the way to town for my son's graduation party this weekend, so they're listening. My mom texted that she used to hate that I would put pictures of the kids out there. And my view on that was always...
You know who else hated that? Your kids.
Yeah, until I stopped putting pictures of them out there, and they're like, hey, how come I'm never... what happened? Did I do something wrong? My view on that was always, look, if you're going to go to the trouble to look at a picture, do a background analysis, figure out where the photo was taken, hope that my kids are there, like it would be much easier to just go to my house, which I'm in the book. Right? So I always looked at it as like, this is not a realistic concern. I do think in an era where this week we're hyper-focused on this fact that there are people out there that are so obsessed, so angry, that they are going to come to a part-time elected state representative's house and kill them. So I confess that the way I'm thinking about this stuff is a little different.
Well, and there's a usefulness to that, right? Because this has been an issue in terms of domestic violence cases for a long time.
Mm,
People's ability to go and get information and show up at people's houses that have
yeah,
restraining orders and all that different stuff. So, it's not like this is a brand new issue that, we too much
right.
information or we can
No,
find information too easily on the internet. But if it took, if one of the good things that comes out of this mess, this tragedy, this horrific situation is we somehow are able to get a better handle on this and make it maybe not quite so easy, or at least put a few hoops you have to jump through.
right.
Okay, that probably is a good thing because it's not getting better.
It's not getting better. It's not getting better. Finding an address is very easy, says a texter. And yes, I've Googled my own. There are sites you can pay to fix your address. And when I search for my information, there's the correct information. There are plenty of incorrect information, which is also true. Like if you've moved around at all, like sometimes your name gets associated with the wrong address, sometimes the info is wrong. So maybe that's the path. I just think about my own safety, and we're going to talk to Minneapolis Mayor R.T. Ryback in a little bit on an unrelated issue, but I do ask him about what happened this weekend in Minnesota. And maybe that's the fix, like flood the internet with wrong information. Maybe I should put a bunch of bogus addresses out there. But it's a little unnerving, I think. And if you're an elected official, how do we balance this need to know that you really do live where you say you live? Because that's important too, as we saw in the northeast suburbs of the Twin Cities, where we had a guy run for office who said he was going to move and didn't move. And how do you verify and fact check that stuff? Because you should be able to verify and fact check that stuff as a citizen. So we're talking about addresses, private information. And if there's anything we can do to get it under control. Because the other solution here is security for every elected official. And maybe that's what, maybe this does need to be part of, if you've got local police departments, part of their beat is taking a drive-by elected officials' houses. I don't know. How bleak is that, right? You get your arms around that?
Well, and how many of them have the manpower, especially in greater Minnesota,
Yeah.
to be able to do that?
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Texter saying that there's no way that the media can put that toothpaste back in the tube. I don't know what the media
Yeah, I don't know why this
had
is
to do
somehow the
about
media's
this.
fault, but okay.
But the reality is there's just so much information about us out there. And most of it that you worry about, like today, there's a report of the largest password breach in American history, billions of passwords that have been accessed. And like a lot of times, I think this is our fault, right? We're pretty fast and loose with information. We don't change our passwords. We don't do the one password sort of, the programs where they run it so no one can really get your password stored in the vault for you to get to.
Until they get hacked.
When it comes to the address, it's like, this is not us, right? Texture says Senator Klobuchar said they don't announce when showing up at events as much. I've noticed that too, like sort of the government information about where they're going to be. They try to keep it a little more unpredictable.
We get a lot of, the press releases from various politicians, especially in town, that are announcing, hey, we're going to have this event. If you're going to send somebody, email this individual and they'll tell you where it's at. Rather than just having the blanket press release. Yeah.
Right.
So you at least have to show credentials of some sort in order to get that information.
Yeah. I don't know. It's very difficult. And the reality is these people search websites. I would be in favor of shutting them down, right? But they just go overseas or whatever.
Yeah, that's just it.
In public information access, Well, there is a new Minnesota law about this. I want to mention this. You will have the right, starting July 31st, to request that your information gets deleted and you opt out of data selling. It's called the Minnesota Consumer Data Privacy Act. But again, like all of this information is already out there. So, like, yeah, you can opt out, and then anywhere you move or anything you do going forward is maybe good, but like otherwise, you're sort of hosed.
Well, and do we have the apparatus to be enforcing that law? It's one thing to say it's got to go, but
Well, and that is the other thing about this. If you pass a law, you cannot legislate your way out of immorality. It's illegal to shoot somebody, too, and that law didn't prevent what happened this weekend. It does have me thinking, though, about being more protective of my data and more careful with it.